The Fire Emblem series is home to many legendary weapons with many varying abilities as well, one of which, the Falchion, has been a staple weapon of the series ever since its debut on the first game, from Fire Emblem Shadow Dragon and the Blade of Light as a legendary dragon-slaying weapon only capable of being wielded by the main protagonist, Marth. It will then make many more appearances outside the first game, wielded by either Marth's descendant or another character in their journey to liberate their homeland. Now, according to the wiki, the creation of the Falchion, also known as King's Fang, is as follows. It was forged by Naga, the leader of the Divine Dragons during a war long before the event of the first game, by using one of her fangs as the materials, hence the name King's Fang, imbuing it with the power to slay dragons and wyverns alike.
It will later on be given to the hero, Anri, who would then use it to slay the evil dragon, Medeus, who to this day, still wasn't added to the ever-growing roster of characters in Fire Emblem Heroes.
From then on, the blade will forever be bound to its bloodline, passed down to its descendants from Marth to the first exile, Chrom and then Lucina. Fast forward 100 years later, the Holy Sword Falchion was then stolen by Garneth, one of the main antagonists from the first game. After successfully convincing the head of the Kingdom of Grad to invade Altea, he will then murder and loot the Falchion from the body of the late King Cornelius, the father of Lord Marth and Elise. The legendary blade will later be retrieved by Marth during his long and arduous journey to reclaim his homeland, and much like his ancestor before him, the Falchion will then be used to ultimately bring another end to the newly revived Medeus. The Falchion, as used in Shadow Dragon and the Blade of Light, has the might stats of 10 along with 200% hit rate and a weight of 3. It also has the previously mentioned special effect of being highly effective against the likes of dragons or manakites, and can also function similarly to a restorative item whenever it is used as such. In the upgraded release for the Nintendo DS, the Falchion received an upgrade. It now uses a weapon ranking system possessing the rank of E, meaning that it can be used immediately by Marth as soon as he gets it. It also received an increase to its might, weight, and gained a weapon experience of 2 per hit. Since then it is possible to lose both Tiki and the Falchion just before the final confrontation with Medeus in the updated release, another copy of the Falchion can be obtained by Marth, along with another Manakiti unit, if the player managed to clear the required bonus chapter first. Being a mere copy of the Falchion, it is somewhat weaker than the original, possessing only 7 might with a 90% hit rate, 5 less might than its original, which really goes a long way. Overall, this copy being far weaker can be interpreted as the game's way of punishing you for losing it in the first place, and gotten Tiki killed as well. But hey, silver lining, you get a big titty MILF dragon out of this ordeal. So I'll say that is indeed a pretty sweet trade-off. This regal weapon will appear once more in the direct sequel to Shadow Dragon, which is Mystery of the Emblem, possessing the same stats and effect, while also used for the same purpose as the first game.
As the dust settles, and peace return, albeit temporarily, another war is being fought somewhere, in the distant land of Valentia.
Besides Marth's Falchion, which we'll dub as Arcanaean's Falchion, there is another one in existence, and potentially many more. But for now, we will be only talking about this particular one, and the importance it holds during the events of Fire Emblem Gaiden. The word Gaiden, which when translated into English can either mean tale or side stories. A fitting name for the second game of the series, as the plot took place just before the events of Mystery of the Emblem, featuring some number of memorable characters from the first game like the Pegasus sisters, Pella, Kitria, and S, and a certain character I won't be saying the name of due to spoilers reasons. Like the Arcanaean's Falchion, it was also fashioned into a blade by using one of the fangs of Naga, thus causing it to possess the same special abilities its Arcanaean counterpart has, and some more. It will then be given to Duma, one of the 2 sleeping gods who was exiled from Arcanaea, for destroying an entire civilization in the span of 3 days, in hopes that wherever he may be, the Falchion will be the fangs they lack, acting as some sort of precaution for the people should both Duma and his younger sister Milla, who chose to accompany him through his exile, eventually fall victim to the process of degeneration, a mutual fate that all dragon people share. Many years later, another nation began to emerge near the continent of Valentia, where both Duma and Mila rule up to their exile. A pirate nation, one that could seriously pose a threat to both gods, as their power had slowly waned over time due to the previously mentioned process of degeneration. As such, both gods decided to enter a blood pact with their chosen warrior, bestowing upon them the rights to use the Falchion and the spell Ragnarok. The name of those chosen are Rachel and Zofia, who later go on to establish their own kingdom under their own name, with each of the sibling gods as their patron deity. As time passed, Duma's sanity slowly degraded due to the degeneration process, eventually reaching a state where he could no longer desire anything else other than power and conquest, twisting his belief and goal into something far more sinister before ultimately convincing Rudolf, the current emperor of Rachel at the time, to instigate a war just so he could quench his thirst to conquer and subjugate. This sparked another conflict between the nations, one where the people of Rachel eventually coming out on top due to the particularly harsh teaching of the patron deity Duma. Through the use of the Valentian Falchion, Emperor Rudolf was able to best Mila in combat and seal her way into the blade, unknowingly gifting the Falchion with an additional ability to banish evil in the form of monsters, which manifested in-game as effectiveness against monster enemies. Perhaps sensing Rudolf's true intention, what remains of Mila's consciousness also seal away the Falchion on top of her remains, so that no man nor any other living being can wield its power without her blessings. Near the end of the game, it will then be retrieved by Alm, the main protagonist, after successfully leading his party to the Temple of Duma, where the corpse of Mila was placed after her defeat. The Valentian Falchion is pretty much identical in function to its Arcanian counterpart, retaining its dragon-slaying properties and its eye function as a restorative item. In the Shadows of Valentia's remake, the Falchion stays mostly the same aside from the newly included combat arts. When equipped, the Falchion enables the use of Scan Scale, the ultimate combat art available to all, which can be used to deal significant amount of damages towards a single enemy.
Thousands of years had passed since the reign of the Hero King. Marth had achieved peace, although only briefly. Fire Emblem Awakening could be interpreted as a distant sequel to the first and third Fire Emblem game. It features Marth's descendants as the main protagonists, and not to mention the Arcanian Falchion, which has been passed down from line to line of the Hero King himself. Chrom, the Hero King's descendant, starts out with the Falchion already in his arsenal, although it is far weaker than its previous appearances in past games. It is infinitely reusable and can also function as a Wyrm Slayer, in turn making it somewhat of a cheaper alternative to avoid spending the limited amount of gold you get through playthrough, unless you have the DLC of course. The Falchion's design had also greatly changed in between Marth's game and the Awakening lore. Lore-wise, the Falchion, Divine Enchantment, was diminishing. This causes parts other than the blade to experience degradation. Eventually, those parts had to be replaced, causing those design changes. Speaking of the design, Awakening's Falchion features a tear-shaped hole right at the crossguard, which bears resemblance to the mark of the exile that all descendants of the first exile are born with. On the subject of the line of the first exile, he was a warrior of great renown. Although his name is now lost to history, his legacy still stands strong after 1,000 years has passed. His feats include slaying the fell dragon Grima, who was so powerful at the time, he single-handedly threatened to destroy the whole entire world. It was only by entering a pact with Naga herself that humanity truly stands a chance against this terrible foe. With the Falchion's true power unlocked, the felled dragon was successfully sealed away for another 1,000 years, eventually leading to the events of Fire Emblem Awakening, where history would repeat itself once more, but in more ways than one this time. The Falchion in Awakening remains mostly the same as in the previous titles, although due to the lack of dragon enemies other than the final boss, its dragon effectiveness properties are extended to the Wyvern Rider class enemies, ultimately making it the Falchion an infinitely reusable Wyrm Slayer. Another Falchion is also available in the game under the name Parallel Falchion, and this can only be wielded by Lucina, who disguises herself as Marth throughout the majority of the early game. As Crom's daughter from the future, she also qualifies as one of Marth's descendants, possessing better stats all around and can also be used to recover some amount of health. Like in the past games, the Falchion would also play an important role in the events of Awakening, where it is lore-wise the only weapon capable of harming the big bad, but it must be fully powered up before it could take a benevolence that is Grima. Like the first Exalt, to truly unlock the power of Falchion and save the world, the wielder must have fully completed the Fire Emblem first with all gems inserted before they can attempt the ritual, although the ritual could still be done without all the necessary gems inserted. The result would be incomplete, however, as it would not gain its full power and thus unable to seal Grima away, despite the sizable increase in power it gains as seen with the Parallel Falchion. If all the requirements are fulfilled and the wielder's will are strong enough, then the Falchion would be awakened in its true form. The Exalted Falchion, which possesses far greater power than both its sealed version and its parallel version. The blade would gain a not so subtle orange glow along its edges in design, and the usually empty tear-shaped hole in the crossguard will also start glowing blue, signifying its true power being unleashed.
Overall, the history of the Falchion in the Fire Emblem series has had a massive impact to the game's story development, serving as the sole weapon that is used to kill the big bad or final boss of every game it has been included in. Throughout its multiple appearances in the franchise, it has undertaken many different forms and designs. Nonetheless, the fact still remains that this weapon is feared among the dragons, and will forever be a staple of the Fire Emblem multiverse. Anyway, this video has nearly reached its end, but before that, I just want to thank Legendary Jorge for agreeing to this collab with me. Super wholesome guy. Go check his channel out, you definitely won't regret it. With all that said, this is truly goodbye for now. See ya next time.